All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're exploring the life of one of the most pivotal figures in all of human history, Jesus Christ. For more than 2,000 years, his story, his teachings, they've shaped entire civilizations. So let's get into it.
And that really brings us to the big question, right? How did one man from a small corner of the world 2,000 years ago go on to change the course of history and become a spiritual guide for billions of people? It's a huge question, and we're going to try to unpack it.
Okay, so where does a story like this even begin? Well, it starts in a surprisingly ordinary place, but during an absolutely extraordinary time, ancient Judea.
You really have to get the context here. The Roman Empire was in charge of, well, everything, including the region of Judea. It was into this politically charged world, somewhere between 4 and 6 BC, that Jesus was born in Bethlehem to Mary and Joseph. He grew up in a little town called Nazareth, learning to be a carpenter from his dad.
And for nearly 3 decades, that was pretty much his life. Simple, quiet. From what all the accounts suggest, he lived a peaceful existence, totally unknown outside his village. There was really no hint of the incredible journey that was about to unfold.
But then, everything changed. Just like that, his private life came to an end, and his public mission, you could almost call it his call to adventure, began.
The big turning point came when he was about 30 years old with his baptism by John the Baptist. From that moment on, his life took a completely new direction. He started traveling all over, teaching these huge crowds, and, according to the accounts from the time, performing miracles that really captured people's attention.
So, what was he actually teaching? Well, in a world that had really rigid social hierarchies, his message was, well, it was radical. He was talking about love, mercy, and forgiveness. He focused on caring for the poor and the weak, and just promoting kindness to everybody. It was this profound message of hope.
Now, he didn't do this alone. To help spread his message, he chose a small, core group, 12 close followers, we know as his disciples. These were the people who walked beside him, who learned directly from him, and who would ultimately be tasked with carrying his teachings to the rest of the world.
But here's the thing. When your influence grows that quickly, you're bound to get some opposition. His rising popularity created this tension that would lead directly to the most dramatic and dangerous moments of his life.
The central conflict was becoming crystal clear. On one side, you have Jesus' message attracting these massive crowds, his influence spreading like wildfire. And on the other side, you have the established religious leaders who saw him as a major threat to their authority and all their traditions.
You know, that kind of growing tension couldn't last forever. It all came to a head in Jerusalem, right during the festival of Passover, which is one of the most important times in the Jewish calendar. And it was right there that this conflict finally boiled over, and it led to his arrest.
What happens next is really the emotional and theological core of this entire story. It's a sequence of events that would end up defining a new faith for millennia to come.
So after he's arrested, Jesus finds himself in front of the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Now, according to the historical accounts, Pilate didn't really think he'd done anything wrong, but he was under a ton of pressure from both the religious leaders and the crowd. So he yielded and sentenced Jesus to crucifixion, a really brutal Roman execution, saved for the worst criminals.
The next 3 days are, you could argue, the most famous in history. On the first day, Jesus was crucified and died. For his followers, it was this moment of absolute devastation. It must have felt like the end of everything. But the story didn't end there, because on the third day, something extraordinary was reported to have happened, the resurrection.
The resurrection is without a doubt the bedrock of the Christian faith. The belief that Jesus actually rose from the dead symbolizes a victory over death itself. It's seen as the ultimate promise of eternal life and the final confirmation of his divine nature.
So, after his life on earth, Jesus left behind a legacy that wouldn't just endure, it would literally go on to change the course of human history forever.
I mean, his influence is just undeniable. His teachings have shaped whole cultures and civilizations. They've inspired some of the greatest works of art and literature we've ever known. They form the foundation for churches all across the globe. And his message of compassion, it continues to resonate, even today.
There's a quote from our source material that I think really captures the sheer scale of his impact. It says, "His story is not only the story of a man, it is the story of a movement, a message, and a hope that continues to echo through generations." That pretty much hits the nail on the head, doesn't it?
So we'll end with this thought.
The story of Jesus is, for billions, a story of faith, but it's also woven deep into the fabric of our shared history. And that leaves all of us with a question to reflect on. What is the greatest lesson from this story for us today?